Hello everyone and welcome to this second session of the second day of the Sonic Ecology Conference here from the Asia Society Hong Kong Centre. I'm joined here with Eugene Birman and Kingsley Ng, who are the artistic directors of a fantastic new production that just took place as part of Renew Vision, formerly known as the New Vision Arts Festival. And we wanted to have this conversation with both of you because it really it brought up a lot of issues about productions. Well, firstly, the role of big data in the creation of new works, interdisciplinary work, and also, I suppose how pandemics have reshaped productions at this time. And you know, the bigger message of how sustainable new productions are, which, you know, in this case, you know, was well, perhaps I just introduced the production from the website of the production. It says breathing life into big data and animated by children's imagination. ARIA is an ethereal encounter of vocal performances, dance, and immersive light installations in the nighttime conservatory. So it took place at the conservatory in Hong Kong Park, is that correct?
Correct.
And it featured the Theatre of Voices from Denmark, appearing via hologram, and various live performances by the Hong Kong Children's Choir, and a wonderful installation by Kingsley, fantastic music by Eugene. So I'd just like to welcome you both here, just to talk a little bit about this production and some issues that we just chatted about.
Thank you. What shall we begin with?
Well, what about firstly, just can you explain how this whole production came about and
Sure. Kingsley, may I?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sure. I think the impetus for this was a kind of initiative at the Hong Kong Baptist University, where both Kingsley and I are working to try to combine, to try to basically do interdisciplinary research, but more than that, to try to look into how, essentially how research can be put it out into the world through methods beyond sort of journal articles and books, and also how to sort of break through some of the boundaries between music, quote unquote, visual art, computer science, data, whatever. I mean, these are sort of just categories that are relevant to this project. So in a way, we wanted to, this is sort of the first project that attempted to do that. And so in a way, we had the responsibility to at least try to achieve something on a topic that I think I can say that matters quite a bit to both of us, which is not just simply the environment in a very general sense, but also how we relate to, how art relates to our world that we live in. Because despite the fact that, you know, perhaps, there are a lot of inherent issues in the funding of art, in the creation of art, in travel, all of that relates to productions. But I think for us, it was important to try to make a production that contemplated the environment and the air without, let's say, negatively contributing to the same topic that we're trying to highlight.
How about from your perspective, Kingsley?
First of all, just to clarify, so both myself and Eugene, we are co-director, and I'm involved with the visual, and of course, all the sound and music, it's from Eugene. But here from my side, there's also a big team working together, so it's not just my own installation. It's actually a lot of people's hard work. So yes, it is very collaborative process, but as Eugene pointed out, it initiated from this research grant from HKBU, and Eugene is the PI, the principal investigator.
The private investigator.
Private. Principal, and I am a co-I. And so we also respect that this is very much an initiative that is led by Eugene, and so for us, when we contemplate on the visual and the experiential side, it's really how we can give form to Eugene's music. So yeah, that's kind of the backbone of the how it comes about.
Yeah, perhaps we give a little bit of context as well in the observatory in Hong Kong Park. Really beautiful. It was just after twilight. You know, the audience, actually a very limited audience, you know, due to COVID restrictions, right? Just how many people? 10 to 20?
20 per performance and 40 per night, because we had 2 performances per night. And this was a limit given to us at the very sort of, through a lot of discussion, and I would say quite a fortuitous gift to us from the LCSD, who were the partners for this production, because I think up until about less than 2 weeks before the production, we had no real idea whether we could even have a public audience. And I think it was through their determination to stage something while it was possible in Hong Kong that it really happened. So I think this is really a case of the LCSD going above and beyond their remit in what was possible to help accommodate this. But it was 20 per performance, in fact.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and it was
very thankful to because
yeah, I mean for something to happen in November, particularly now, I mean venues again have closed down.
Exactly.
And,
because the scheme was that this was in the Renew Vision scheme, so we have had the platform to showcase our kind of VR version, and there will be also a filmed version, and they are in the Renew Vision platform website. But for the real, like the physical experience, physical show events, that was only until like 15 days before the performance we got this green light, and so we were, although we could only cater 40 guests every night for how many nights? 8 nights?
8 nights.
8 nights, yeah, for 8 nights. So it's very small number of guests, only a couple of hundred people, but we are extremely grateful.
yeah, can you take us a little bit through the journey as people enter the space? I mean, for me personally, it was my first time in that conservatory, you know, and actually the production itself highlighted, I mean, as well as the performance, it highlighted, you know, certain elements of the conservatory itself and the exhibits within the conservatory, and you know, through the various you know, the lighting and the staging, you know, you were drawn to particular parts of the conservatory itself. And I wonder if either of you could comment on, you know, how you sort of devised the journey through the space and how new that experience was for both of you in that specific site.
I'll defer this to the visual artist first. I think it's only fair.
Well, I'll give you a nutshell. So, well, the conservatory. First of all, the reason why we chose the conservatory is it's a very loaded site as well. A conservatory, well, it's an urban sanctuary, and it is itself already like a powerful space for narrating climate change. So very early on, we thought about like, well, what place, what sites can we empower to talk about this topic, and we thought about this greenhouse, the conservatory, and we're very grateful that we work with the team and got it working, and of course the greenhouse, the conservatory also connects to areas, projects like the Biosphere 2 in Arizona, or Eden's project in Cornwall, that experience how life can sustain in closed ecological system. So this again, it's a very potent space to talk about like utopia and dystopia. So we essentially want to empower the greenhouse, the conservatory to its fullest. And the greenhouse in the Hong Kong Forsgate Conservatory, there is well, there are 3 main zones. One is so-called the humid or forest zone, and the other one is kind of dry zone, which is, we call it the desert zone. And there is also a temporary exhibition space. So for us, we wanted to narrate the journey through first the lush humid forest, where visitors feel the trees are cooling themselves, and also imagine what air maybe potentially is talking about at night. in a more metaphorical way. So we are almost like spirits going into this very lush and comfortable environment. Evening time, whispers from the forest. And then the next zone that we go into is the dry zone. So with cutters and sort of suffocating kind of air and dryness. And also the lighting designer, Zhang Ziwei, made it really red and hot just by the lighting to give it to really heighten that sense. And then so that is more kind of the dystopian narrative. And then we also have some LED light strokes, which we use to showcase some big data. Actually, we also, as Eugene may have mentioned, that we work with the computer science department where they have an algorithm to source people's comments on air in Hong Kong through social media. So we harness that, and we then use an LED scroller, very simple technologies and simple visual effects to showcase these data. And then we move into the temporary exhibition space, and then we go to the semi open space for a 30 minutes performance by theater voices. More or less, it's kind of like that, the structures. Eugene, anything you want to fill?
Well, I think from my perspective, in terms of this, what sort of genre this work really fits into, what was very, I think was very important, and maybe I'm not, I don't dare speak for Kingsley in terms of his approach to art in any way, but I think what's very, for me, striking, looking at this production also from the outside as well as from the inside, is the idea of reusing a space. Instead of simply kind of constructing a pavilion or creating a set, because I think in most cases when we talk about music that's staged, we talk about building sets, we talk, I mean, this is sort of the standard in opera and musical theater. And so what I think really speaks very honestly and directly from Kingsley's work, and I think this can be said beyond this project for sure, is the eloquence in taking an existing space that has its own story, that has its own spirit, and instead of imposing something on it that where we kind of bring our own production and turn it into something, of actually understanding what that space maybe wants to say, if it could speak, if it could sing, and making a production that way. And I think there's something to say for that for the future, especially in productions that touch on the environment, because there's this is not the only building in Hong Kong that actually highlights the environment and the earth in a way. There are many sites like this. But in this case, I think for us, it was very important to do justice to the site and to actually use it to tell a story instead of just bringing a story to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I really loved about walking into the space, and particularly, since we're in groups of such small numbers, appropriate to this time, and it must have been quite a job for the live performers to be involved and to have to repeat so much, since they were kind of led in.
Sure, but for the crew, I think big time as well, because ultimately, it's one thing to use a theater with its own lighting systems, with everything built in, wired through. In this case, our team basically had to construct a theater from a building that was never meant to be a theater.
Yeah,
and to repeat it 16 times.
Yeah.
And in fact, every night we took down a lot of those things because the building would have to open as an LCSD public venue, and then to put it back up. And I think this again comes back to the philosophy behind our approach. And I think what Kingsley really wanted to do, I guess I can say, is to make something that also speaks to a kind of awareness of resources and material, that's something that can be put away, that's something that can be disappear in overnight, a little bit of like a Cinderella situation, speaks to the topic.
Yeah, and maybe we could come to the music now, and something that we haven't talked a lot about. It's
on purpose,
very significant work of music as well. And something that really stood out to me is, I mean, it it was a practicality, but it sort of became part of the theatre in a way, which was, we have this the Hong Kong Children's Choir all masked up, where the mask actually becomes, sort of for me, sort of with the breathing sort of in and out. And usually we only see, in a pre-pandemic world, we see masks when it's heavily polluted or people are sick. But here, a children's choir that is masked up, where the masks, sort of inhaling, exhaling, and the performers are kind of I don't know, that was kind of became part of the piece.
Yeah, actually, so to come back to the very beginning of this project, I think a lot of, for me, a departure point was the idea that to speak about air pollution from a musical side, as you know, as a string player, you would not, if somebody told you, come play a concert in the rain with your instrument, whichever instrument it may be, or if you have an expensive instrument, you simply wouldn't do it, because or I have friends who have sort of exotic violins or whatever. They don't take those violins out for gigs outside, for example, because they worry about the damage from the sun, the humidity, from air quality, whatever. And yet we expect singers to sing in whatever circumstances we wish, despite the fact that their instrument is actually the most fragile and the most easily damaged by air pollution and particulate matter. And so the departure point for this production musically for me was the fact that, to be able to sing, we need to breathe. If we cannot breathe, we cannot sing, fundamentally, which is why the production is vocal only. And from that point, of course, we get into the mask issue, which is, of course, something that was imposed on us by reality in Hong Kong and around the world. And again, it's just like the use of holograms in this production. It's in a way, it only highlights the situation and the reality. That, for example, this effect of breathing, which on stage without masks is, I would say, at best moderately dramatic, becomes exceedingly dramatic when there's a mask, because you can really see the struggle and the actual act of doing it. So in that sense, the issue of masks, which I mean, until October, I didn't know how it would work with children singing in masks, because could you hear anything? Would you understand the consonants? Would you understand anything? Could they sing? Could they hold a note? I mean, all these issues we just have no idea about. And we were, I think, with Kingsley trying to figure out what are the options. Should we mic them? Should they have shields? Should they? What are the possibilities? Because we're still sort of thinking in 2019 land about how performers should look and what are the expectations. And so those things have completely been upended.
Absolutely. And 2019 land, I think that really highlights some key issues here, because 2020 land, pandemic, the world of pandemic productions, the fact that we have the theater of voices appearing via hologram, I mean, how such a production can be repeated. Also about environmental sustainability in these issues related to new productions, and in fact, as an environmentally sustainable production, you're talking about, we can realize new creative work without performers having to travel internationally, which of course has much zero carbon footprint.
It has some still.
We
have to plug the holograms in.
Yeah, related to energy usage, of course. But in terms of international flights and things like this, yeah, I mean, for me, that and I think what this production can highlight is, well, what and you mentioned it before, that there were questions whether how and under what circumstances this production would be presented, and I just wonder if you have some thoughts about that from a the point of environment, from the standpoint of environmental sustainability.
Shall I? Briefly, and then I'll pass it. Yeah, I think it's impossible for anyone to claim carbon neutral anything in music or installation art or anything. I mean, it's sort of about how true you are to your own principles. And for this, I think we wanted to at least make somewhat of a point about a production that would highlight things and bring to mind things without sort of a judgment call about the audience and their choices. But also in terms of this being a production that can be toured, it's an open question about what that means, first of all, and also sort of the idea of these sort of I don't know how it will be in the future with the sort of ecosystems of international festivals, because they survive on international productions with international artists, with stars. So what will be the future for those festivals? I suppose everything will go back to normal exactly like it was, because I think humanity likes to snap back into to the old rhythm, but certain things will be forever changed for sure. And so in a way, I think what for me was very strong about this production, and what I heard from many people who attended, was that I mean, this is one of not so many live productions in Hong Kong this year, and one of not so many debut sort of productions that actually was not, you know, brought from somewhere else or restaged or reorganized or something like that. And so a lot of local people were involved. I mean, you can say by necessity, but in fact, Hong Kong has so much talent that we sometimes forget. And because of exactly the same temptation of international festivals to invite international stars. And so you can say by necessity, but also by privilege, we had the ability to work with local artists, local crew, local dancers, local singers with the Hong Kong Children's Choir, and still have international media be interested. And I think there's something to that, you know, this sort of culture that Hong Kong needs international legitimacy through inviting international artists. Maybe for me, at least, that is almost sort of like an environmental point, can be a successful question mark that this production brings. Is that necessary when you can do so much with the wonderful people that are already here?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great, thank you. On the note of sustainability, on environmental sustainability, I also want to introduce a project by also the curator of our project area is Stephanie Zhang, and she also recently staged an exhibition in oil streets, also around the notions of sustainability. And what they have done is, at the end of the exhibition, there is like a wall of inviting people to do plaque, like promises that, well, after they got inspired by the exhibition, if they want to eat less steak or take shorter shower, or fly less, then they make a stamp on the wall. And by the end, they have collected and calculated how much carbon footprint offsets that can create. So like Eugene said, well, the production itself, it's very difficult to be carbon neutral. We do use quite a lot of things. We do use electricity, we do transports and whatnot. So that would be very difficult. But then maybe a scheme like that, like this other exhibition by Stephanie, could also be shed light to some new practices. And also in terms of, again, using the greenhouse, another considerations is that, well, the greenhouse in the evening, they would have the air cons and the ventilation system going anyway. So we are not putting new pressure on new infrastructures. So if we're playing it in other environments where they have to turn on the AC and stuff like that, then that is a burden on that. But if we're using existing structures where there is already the system in place that is being used anyway during those hours, so we are in that aspect, it's saving energies on the AC at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're down to our last few minutes, but I'm just wondering if we have any questions from our audience on Zoom. So if you have any questions, you can either type into the chat box, or preferable if you just unmute, ask the question and mute again. If anybody has any burning question they would either like to ask a composer and artist in this production of ARIA. Anybody? If not, I'll ask a final. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have anybody, but really thank thank you too for joining us today. I very much enjoyed and appreciated the production of ARIA. And yeah, I'm sure that the conversation will continue later, and some really interesting points that were brought to the fore today. So really, thank you guys for joining us.